could ever blow up in the way that a Daniel Bryan could. Not a Dolph Ziggler, not an Alberto Del Rio. Nobody could blow up in the way of a Daniel Bryan. And WWE realized that. That's why when Daniel Bryan was forced to retire back in 2014, 2015 and relinquish the Intercontinental title because they didn't know what was wrong with him, still trying to figure out things for Daniel Bryan to do. That's why WWE were backed into a proverbial corner, which there seemed to be no way out of. There still seems to be no way out of it because they can't create someone as big as what Daniel Bryan was ultimately, and that's where they're really suffering, and that's why they're desperately trying to create things for Roman Reigns and Dean Ambrose to do. They've done it, but the question is, at the end of the day, have they done enough? And I don't think they have really done enough with Dean Ambrose and Roman Reigns, who have yet to realize their fullest potential with professional wrestling. And I don't think I'm wrong in having said anything I have when talking about someone like Dean Ambrose, because Dean Ambrose is just so fun to watch, and by far, he's one of the more entertaining wrestlers we've seen come along in a long time. Now, he's not an Intercontinental Champion in the way of The Rock, because The Rock really took the Intercontinental title and really changed it for the better, because he was one of the more entertaining Intercontinental Champions of all time, the best damn Intercontinental Champion there ever was in The Rock's promos. And I think truer words were never reiterated by The Rock time and time again in those promos, because he believed that he was the best of his era, and undoubtedly he was. That'll be argued for years to come through the generations of wrestling. You know, if The Rock was really the best Intercontinental Champion we saw of all time, with the Honky Tonk Man holding a record of over a year as Intercontinental Champion before losing that title to the Ultimate Warrior, which obviously had to happen and was meant to happen in the minds of the Warrior and all the Warriors fans. But I mean, we've seen some of the greatest Intercontinental Champions of all time, and yeah, there's really no comparison to The Rock and Dean Ambrose, or at least at this point. But to say he's not going to get to that point is kind of just jumping to a conclusion, and I'm not going to draw my own conclusion and say that Dean Ambrose will never get to that point with how entertaining he is and just how he has a long way to go with his wrestling career. Right now, what we're looking at is Dean Ambrose as Intercontinental Champion this close to WrestleMania, and obviously past WrestleMania, depending on the challenge he will be faced with. A lot of people feel it's going to be Kevin Owens versus Dean Ambrose, or probably 2 or 3 other challengers thrown in there, making it a fatal 4-way for WrestleMania 32. I will not go past the potential of having a fatal 4-way, because right now it seems that's the way it's going. They'll probably have Dean Ambrose defending the title against someone like Kevin Owens, Dolph Ziggler, and probably a 4th party thrown in there, probably someone like a Sheamus or an Alberto Del Rio. That's the way it looks right now. But, you know, for what it's worth, you know, I really appreciate what they're doing with both the champion, with Roman Reigns and Triple H, and Dean Ambrose. And I think that there's a lot that could go with what's happening with Dean Ambrose right now. In the very near future. 2016 is going to be a really exciting year for all the Dean Ambrose fans we have out there listening to this show every week. And you can get in on the conversation on my Facebook page at HEW Entertainment. On Twitter, you can give me a tweet at Jonathan Clarke1. And on YouTube at Jonathan Clarke22, you can get in on the conversation by leaving me a comment in your opinion on things like the reigning Intercontinental Champion Dean Ambrose, who, yeah, I'm a really big fan of. And who can blame me at the end of the day for being as big of a Dean Ambrose fan and supporter like I have been, because I don't think anybody can. And I think I speak for every Dean Ambrose fan when I say it's time to be pushing the wrestlers who are worth being pushed and worth being talking about, with how Dean Ambrose has given us something to talk about with the Intercontinental title division for the first time in a long time, which no Intercontinental Champion of the past really has been able to do. He resembles Brian Pillman. That's the comparison I've been throwing around, and I think 4 to 5 months is a sufficient reign for Dean Ambrose as Intercontinental Champion, because that will allow Dean Ambrose to establish himself as probably one of the best Intercontinental Champions of the last 6 months to a year, and it will allow Dean Ambrose to go on to do something far greater than what he's doing right now, because over the years the Intercontinental title has been looked at as a stepping stone for wrestlers like, say, Double J and Shawn Michaels, and it obviously was a stepping stone, obviously, when you're talking about people like Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart and Razor Ramon all the time. There are so many Intercontinental Champions I have forgotten about, and I do apologize for not mentioning the people like Rick Martel and Razor Ramon and even Kevin Nash. I really, you know, feel for those Intercontinental Champions, because they are still some of the greatest of all time, still considered to be some of the greatest of all time. And I think that there are so many Intercontinental Champions we could be talking about. But right now, I think what it's really all about are these new talented wrestlers like the Dean Ambroses of the world, and that's who's going to be talked about for a very long time. I know we've had so many great Intercontinental Champions over the years, like the Ultimate Warrior and Razor Ramon, but I mean, you know, there will be a time to talk about them. down the road. But right now, who it's all about is Dean Ambrose, and it's a really exciting time to be a wrestling fan. So if you are not in on the conversation, what are you waiting for? Go to my Facebook page, Twitter, YouTube, and Google Plus page. Get in on the discussion. I would really appreciate it, and let me know what you think of the reigning Intercontinental Champion, Dean Ambrose. If there ever was a time to be a wrestling fan, the time is now, because there's never been a more unpredictable time to be a follower of professional wrestling like I've been over the last 15 years. And let me end by saying this. I've been a wrestling fan for over 15 years, and I can't recall a more exciting time for the Intercontinental Championship division than what we're seeing right now. Dean Ambrose versus Kevin Owens versus Dolph Ziggler versus probably a fourth or fifth party by the time we get to WrestleMania, with a track record of the Intercontinental title and how it's defended at WrestleMania. They could use it as a kickoff match and say a six-pack ladder match for the Intercontinental title, and it would allow WrestleMania to probably go down in history for being one of the greatest WrestleManias of all time. So it's a really exciting time that we all need to get in on and take advantage of. I'm your host, Jonathan Clarke, and I will see you again next week.
Like what you hear? Tell us on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube.
Sierra Hotel, India, Echo, Lima, Delta, Shield.
Don't go anywhere. HEW Entertainment Radio will return with the latest news, music, interviews, discussion, and Jonathan Clarke next.
When something takes place in the world of professional wrestling, you know where to go. WrestleZone.com. WrestleZone.com. Covering all the latest breaking news daily. Interactive forums where you can chat with thousands of other wrestling fans. Exclusive editorials and audio features by some of today's top wrestling superstars. Exclusive video content, weekly polls, live play-by-play coverage of every WWE and TNA pay-per-view. And now, featuring WrestleZone Radio, live with news, in-depth discussions, debates, and interviews with wrestling's top stars, past and present. When you think wrestling, think WrestleZone. WrestleZone.com.
He considers himself God's gift to wrestling, and millions of his faithful agree. With nearly 4 hours of footage and exclusive commentary and matches, this DVD chronicles Daniels' rise from Chicago's Windy City Wrestling to the Asylum in Nashville, and finally to the top of TNA. TNA Home Video presents Heaven Sent, Hell Bound, the best of Christopher Daniels. Available at most retailers and TNAWrestling.com.
Hey, you right there, the one listening to this show. While you're tuning into this broadcast or when you read the news on WrestleZone.com, are you forming opinions of it all? Or do you just agree with everything you see and hear? If you actually have some sort of afterthought, which, by the way, is normal, we want to know what it is. There are thousands of wrestling fans just like you that simply can't hold their thoughts in either, and they let it all out in our interactive forums. You have a voice, so use it. Simply visit forums.WrestleZone.com. Don't just be active, be reactive in the official WrestleZone.com forums. For all the latest in mixed martial arts, be sure to visit WrestleZone's sister site, SureDog.com. Complete with daily news, exclusive video, interviews, live radio broadcast, interactive forums, and the very popular Fight Finder with bios and complete match-by-match histories of your favorite fighters. SureDog is the only place you need when it comes to mixed martial arts. Visit SureDog.com today.